I was 17 when this happened, just a junior in high school trying to make some extra money. The Hendersons were regulars of mine, nice family, sweet kids, and they always paid well. That Friday night in October seemed like any other babysitting gig. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson were heading to a work dinner downtown and wouldn't be back until around midnight. Their 2 kids, Emma and Jake, were already in pajamas when I arrived at 7. The house was one of those older colonials on Maple Street, the kind with creaky hardwood floors and way too many dark corners. But I'd been there dozens of times before, so I wasn't worried. Mrs. Henderson gave me the usual instructions: bedtime at 8:30, snacks in the pantry, emergency numbers on the fridge. As they headed out the door, Mr. Henderson turned back and mentioned something that would stick with me forever. "Oh, and Sarah," he said, keys jingling in his hand. "If anyone calls asking for us, just tell them we're unavailable. Don't give out any information about where we are or when we'll be back." I thought it was a weird thing to emphasize, but I just nodded and said sure. The door closed and I heard their car pull away down the gravel driveway. The first couple of hours were perfectly normal. Emma and Jake wanted to watch a movie, so I made them popcorn and we settled in to watch some animated film about talking animals. They were giggly and energetic, fighting over who got to sit closest to me on the couch. At 8:30, I herded them upstairs for teeth brushing and tucked them into their beds. Emma made me check under her bed for monsters, which I did with theatrical flair, declaring the room officially monster-free. By 9 o'clock, the house was quiet. Both kids were asleep, and I was downstairs in the living room scrolling through my phone. That's when the landline rang. I walked over to the kitchen where the phone hung on the wall, one of those old cordless ones. I picked it up and answered with my usual babysitter greeting. "Henderson residence?" Silence on the other end. Not complete silence. I could hear breathing, slow and steady, like someone was listening very carefully. "Hello?" I said again, feeling the first tingle of unease. Then a voice, low and raspy, asked, "Are the children asleep?" My stomach dropped. I stood there, frozen, the phone pressed against my ear. Something about the question felt deeply wrong. Not what was asked, but the way it was asked, like whoever was on the other end already knew the answer. "Who is this?" I managed to say, trying to keep my voice steady. Click. They hung up. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand, my heart starting to pound. It was probably just a prank call, I told myself, maybe someone from school messing around, but that voice didn't sound like anyone I knew. I went back to the living room and tried to focus on my phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. About 15 minutes later, the landline rang again. This time I was scared to answer it, but I thought maybe it was the Hendersons checking in. I picked up, and before I could say anything, the same voice spoke. "Have you checked on the children?" This time I could hear something else in the background, a faint sound, like wind or static, and maybe breathing, multiple people breathing. "Stop calling here," I said, my voice cracking. "I'm calling the police." "You should check on the children," the voice repeated, and then the line went dead again. I slammed the phone down, my hands shaking. That's when I decided I needed to call the Hendersons, but when I tried their cell phones, both went straight to voicemail. I left a frantic message for Mrs. Henderson, then immediately called my older sister who lived 20 minutes away. She answered on the second ring. "Sarah? What's wrong?" I told her, words tumbling out. "Someone keeps calling the house. They're asking about the kids and telling me to check on them. I'm really freaked out." "Okay, listen to me," she said, and I could hear her moving around, probably grabbing her keys. "Call the police right now. I'm coming over, but call them first." I hung up and dialed 911. The dispatcher was calm and professional, asking me questions about the calls. She said she was sending an officer to the house and to stay on the line with her. I was in the middle of describing the voice when I heard it, a sound from upstairs, a floorboard creaking. "Did you hear that?" I whispered into the phone. "What did you hear?" the dispatcher asked. Another creak, then another. Footsteps. Someone was walking around upstairs. My entire body went cold. "There's someone in the house," I breathed. "Someone's upstairs." The dispatcher's voice became more urgent. "Sarah, I need you to get out of the house right now. The officer is 3 minutes away. Leave immediately." But the kids were upstairs. Emma and Jake were up there with whoever or whatever was making those sounds. "The children are up there," I said, already moving towards the stairs. "Do not go upstairs," the dispatcher commanded. "Exit the house now." But I was already climbing the stairs, my phone clutched in one hand, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. The upstairs hallway was dark, except for a nightlight plugged into the wall outside the bathroom. Emma's room was on the left, Jake's room was on the right. Both doors were open. I had closed them when I put the kids to bed. I specifically remember closing them because Jake had asked me to leave his cracked open, and I'd told him no because the hallway light would keep him awake. Now, both doors stood wide open, and I could hear something inside Jake's room. A shuffling sound, like someone going through drawers. "Jake?" I called out, my voice barely a whisper. "Emma!"
Don't hang up.
The shuffling stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I heard it, a child's voice, but wrong somehow. Too high-pitched, too sing-songy. "Come play with us, Sarah." It was coming from Jake's room, but that wasn't Jake's voice. I backed away slowly, nearly dropping my phone. The dispatcher was shouting at me to respond, to tell her what was happening. I stumbled backward towards the stairs, and that's when Emma's bedroom door suddenly slammed shut with a bang that echoed through the whole house. I screamed and ran. I flew down the stairs, nearly tripping over my own feet, and sprinted straight for the front door. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the deadbolt. When I finally got it open, I ran outside into the cold October air, down the driveway, and didn't stop until I was standing in the middle of the street under a streetlight. The police arrived less than a minute later. I watched from the street as 2 officers entered the house with their flashlights and weapons drawn. My sister pulled up shortly after, and I collapsed into her arms, sobbing. The officers were inside for what felt like hours, but was probably only 10 minutes. When they came out, one of them walked over to me with a strange expression on his face. "Miss, we need you to tell us exactly what you heard." "What about the kids? Are they okay?" "The children are fine. They're both asleep in their beds. They didn't wake up during any of this." "But someone was up there. I heard them walking around. I heard a voice." The officer exchanged a glance with his partner. "Miss, there's no one else in the house. We checked every room, every closet, the attic, the basement. All the doors and windows are locked from the inside. But what?" He hesitated. "There is something in the boys' room." He held up a plastic evidence bag. Inside was a piece of paper with words written in crayon. Child's handwriting, but the letters were too perfect, too uniform. It read, "We're always watching the children." My blood turned to ice. The officer continued, "Can you tell me if you saw anyone write this? Did the kids have paper and crayons out earlier?" I shook my head. I hadn't seen anything like that. The officers did another sweep of the house before finally declaring it clear. When Mr. and Mrs. Henderson arrived home 30 minutes later, they found me sitting in my sister's car, refusing to go back inside. Mrs. Henderson looked horrified when the police explained what happened, but Mr. Henderson's face went pale in a different way, like he recognized something in the story. Later, my sister told me she'd learned something from the neighbors while I was talking to the police. The Hendersons had recently gotten a restraining order against Mrs. Henderson's ex-boyfriend, who had been showing up at the house unannounced, and he'd sent threatening messages about the children. But here's what still haunts me. The police never found any evidence of a break-in. No forced windows, no picked locks, nothing. The phone company's records showed the calls came from inside the house, from the phone in the master bedroom upstairs. And when the officers had found the kids asleep, both of them had faint red marks on their wrists, like someone had been holding them tightly. Emma told her parents the next day that she had a dream about a shadow man who told her to be very quiet because they were playing a game of hide and seek with Sarah. She said he had very cold hands.
Why are you still hiding in the dark?